Her world was falling apart, her family on the verge of collapse. But what happens when betrayal and heartbreak pave the way for a second chance? This is a story of redemption, resilience, and a love worth fighting for. Life has a way of throwing surprises at you when you least expect them. That's exactly what happened to me on a seemingly normal Wednesday evening. I had just come back from work, my heels clicking against the wooden floor as I walked into the house. The day had been long and draining, and all I wanted was to soak in a hot bath and let the stress melt away. Little did I know, that evening would leave an indelible mark on my life, one that would change the course of everything in our household. The house was quiet as I entered, which wasn't unusual. Ethan, my husband, had mentioned earlier in the day that he'd be attending a late meeting. He had been working long hours lately, trying to meet a big project deadline. That left only Liam, Ethan's son from his previous marriage, at home. Liam was 20, a reserved yet polite young man who rarely caused any trouble. He worked part-time at a local hardware store and spent most of his free time in his room. Though we weren't especially close, we had a cordial relationship built on mutual respect. Over the years, I had grown used to the quietness in the house when it was just the two of us. As I set my bag on the kitchen counter and poured myself a glass of water, I noticed Liam's car parked in the driveway. Odd, I thought. He usually worked the evening shift. I called out his name casually, my voice echoing through the empty house. No response. Assuming he was in his room with his headphones on or just napping, I didn't think much of it. After finishing my water, I decided to head upstairs to change into something more comfortable. Passing by the bathroom, I noticed the faint sound of running water and the door slightly ajar. This struck me as odd. Liam was meticulous about privacy. My curiosity piqued. I hesitated for a moment before gently pushing the door open a fraction more. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. As the weeks turned into months, life in our household took on a rhythm that felt surprisingly harmonious. Logan continued to open up, both to Thomas and to me, though his progress was gradual and measured. Thomas, true to his nature, stepped into his role as a more present and supportive father, carving out time to strengthen their relationship despite his demanding job. One evening, Thomas suggested we start a new tradition: Sunday family dinners. At first, it seemed like a small gesture, but it quickly became the cornerstone of our weeks. We'd gather around the table, share a meal, and talk about our lives. It was during one of these dinners that Logan, with a hesitant but determined expression, brought up an idea. "I've been thinking about going back to school full-time," he said, his voice steady but tinged with nervousness. "I want to study engineering." Thomas beamed with pride, and I felt a swell of admiration for Logan's courage. "That's a fantastic idea," Thomas said. "You've always been good with numbers and problem-solving." Logan nodded, his confidence growing. "I've been saving up from my job, but I'll need to figure out scholarships or loans to make it work." "We'll help however we can," I chimed in, meaning every word. Logan's determination was inspiring, and I wanted to support him in achieving his goals. Over the next few weeks, the house buzzed with activity as Logan prepared for this new chapter. He spent hours researching programs, filling out applications, and even enlisting my help to proofread his essays. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before: focused, ambitious, and driven. Meanwhile, Thomas and I found ourselves reflecting on our roles in Logan's journey. We spent long evenings talking about how we could better support him and each other. The challenges we'd faced had brought us closer as a couple, and I felt a renewed sense of partnership with Thomas. But life, as always, had its surprises. One Friday evening, as I was clearing the table after dinner, Thomas received a phone call. His expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he listened intently. When he hung up, he looked at me, his brows furrowed. "That was my boss," he said. "There's been an issue with the project I've been working on. They want me to fly out to New York for a few weeks to sort it out." I nodded, understanding the weight of his responsibilities. "We'll manage," I said, trying to sound reassuring. Logan and I will hold down the fort." Thomas left the following morning, and the house felt emptier without him. Logan, however, surprised me once again. He stepped up, offering to help with chores and even suggesting we tackle a few home improvement projects together. One afternoon, as we painted the living room walls, Logan paused, his brush mid-stroke. "I don't think I ever thanked you," he said, his tone serious. "For what?" I asked, looking at him curiously. "For listening to me that day in the bathroom," he said, his gaze meeting mine. "It was awkward and probably uncomfortable for you. But you didn't judge me. You just helped. It meant a lot." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "You've come a long way since then," I said. "I'm proud of you." Logan nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I guess I just needed someone to believe in me." As the days went on, I realized how much our family had grown, not just in the traditional sense, but emotionally and spiritually. The moments of vulnerability, the shared meals, and the quiet conversations had transformed our household into something stronger, something unbreakable. When Thomas returned from his trip, he was greeted with a freshly painted living room and a renewed sense of connection within our family. Logan shared his plans for school, and Thomas couldn't have been prouder. That night, as we sat together in the living room, the three of us laughing and reminiscing, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life would always have its challenges, but we had built something resilient, a family bound not just by blood, but by trust, understanding, and love. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were truly home. As our family settled into this newfound harmony, I began to notice subtle yet profound changes in each of us. Logan was flourishing. His once reserved demeanor was replaced by a quiet confidence, and his excitement for the future was infectious. He'd been accepted into an engineering program at a nearby university, and his days were now filled with preparation, shopping for supplies, planning his schedule, and even setting up a small study corner in his room. Thomas, too, was evolving. The time he'd spent in New York had been a turning point for him. He came back not only more appreciative of the stability we'd built at home, but also with a renewed focus on balancing his career and family life. He began carving out intentional moments with Logan, sharing stories from his own college days and offering advice about navigating adulthood. One evening, as Thomas and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, he reached for my hand. "You know," he said, his voice soft. I didn't realize how much I was missing until I almost lost it. I squeezed his hand, understanding the depth of his words. "Sometimes it takes a shake-up to remind us what's important," I replied. Thomas nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "I'm just glad we found our way back. Life was far from perfect, of course. There were still the occasional misunderstandings and growing pains, but the difference now was how we approached them. We communicated openly, approached challenges as a team, and most importantly, gave each other grace." One weekend, Logan suggested we take a family camping trip before his classes started. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon, we were packing up gear and heading to a nearby state park. The trip turned out to be exactly what we needed, a chance to unplug, reconnect, and create memories that would stay with us forever. Sitting by the campfire on the second night, Logan shared something that took both Thomas and me by surprise. "I've been thinking about what I want to do after college," he began, poking at the fire with a stick. "I want to work on renewable energy projects, something that makes a difference." Thomas grinned, clearly impressed. "That's a noble goal, Logan. The world could use more people like you." Logan shrugged, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I just feel like everything I've been through has given me a different perspective. I want to do something that matters." As I watched him speak, I felt a lump in my throat. This young man, who had once been so lost, had found not just a path, but a purpose. And in doing so, he had brought a sense of meaning to all of us. When we returned home, life resumed its usual pace. But the bonds we had strengthened during that trip remained. Logan started his classes, diving into his studies with an enthusiasm that was inspiring to witness. Thomas continued to strike a balance between work and home, often surprising me with little gestures, like cooking dinner or leaving me notes reminding me how much he loved me. And as for me, I found myself looking forward to each day with a sense of peace and gratitude I hadn't felt in years. The journey we had been on was far from easy, but it had brought us to a place of understanding, resilience, and love that was unshakable. One evening, as I stood in the kitchen watching Logan and Thomas play a competitive game of cards at the dining table, I felt a wave of contentment wash over me. The laughter, the connection, the simple joy of being together. It was everything I had ever hoped for. Life would undoubtedly bring more challenges, but I knew, without a doubt, that we would face them together, as a family. The months rolled on, and with each passing day, our home became a beacon of stability and warmth. Logan was thriving in college, frequently coming home with stories about his classes and new friendships. He had even joined a student organization focused on environmental initiatives, solidifying his passion for renewable energy. Thomas and I continued to deepen our relationship, finding solace in small moments, whether it was sharing a cup of coffee in the morning or walking hand in hand through the neighborhood in the evenings. We rediscovered the joy of simply being present with one another. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, I stumbled across an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of Logan as a child, his first steps, family vacations, and milestones we had almost forgotten. I brought it downstairs, and that evening, we all sat together flipping through the pages, laughing at old memories and sharing stories. "This one's my favorite," Logan said, pointing to a picture of him as a toddler wearing a superhero cape, his hands on his hips in a comically exaggerated pose of confidence. Thomas chuckled. "You insisted on wearing that cape everywhere for months. I think it gave you actual superpowers." "Maybe it did," Logan replied with a grin. "Or maybe you two were my real superheroes." His words struck a chord, and for a moment, silence enveloped the room. Thomas and I exchanged a glance, both of us moved by the sentiment. "Logan," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "you've always been our greatest reason to keep pushing forward. We've had our ups and downs, but through it all, you've been our anchor." "Yeah," Thomas added, his tone earnest. "We're so proud of the man you're becoming, and no matter what, we'll always be here for you." Logan's smile was small, but genuine. "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad." That night, as I lay in bed next to Thomas, I reflected on how far we had come. The struggles we had faced, the mistakes we had made, and the lessons we had learned had all brought us to this moment, a place of unbreakable unity. The future was an open road, full of possibilities and uncertainties, but one thing was clear. Together, we could weather anything. As the dust settles, they find themselves stronger than ever, bound not by perfection, but by the power of forgiveness and love. But life is never without its challenges. Will their bond stand the test of time, or is there another storm on the horizon? Stay tuned for more gripping tales of love, betrayal, and second chances. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to never miss a story that might just change the way you see your own.